Begin the current Daf Masechtas Kidushin Daf Mem Aleph. We begin the second parak Ish Mekadesh, which continues the theme obviously from the previous parak regarding Isha Niknas. The woman is acquired. Here we're changing the gender and we're talking about Ish Mekadesh. But again, we're continuing on the theme really regarding the Kidushin, just speaking about how they go ahead and do the Kidushin. Just goes back to Vakazik and Cheskel. Turn to Daf Chaim. Join today's Daf. So we're discussing today's Daf how Ish Mekadesh. A man can make a Kidushin, it could be boy, he could go ahead and give her the ring himself, or b'shluchai, he could send the agent. Same thing as the Isha Miskadesh, a woman could be engaged, but with herself, or b'shluchai through her agent. Gemara brings two reasons that the Mishnah needed to mention boy. The man can give his own Kidushin. Obviously, if he could do it b'shluchai, obviously he could do it himself. Mitzvah b'yis and b'shluchai, the famous concept about it is a bigger mitzvah to do something yourself than to have your agent. Asla ad mishikadesh isha shilen, it's forbidden for a person in general to make a Kidushin of a woman until he sees her first, to make sure he likes her. Shluchim K'mayis, the famous concept that an Asian person is like himself. Just like you are people of the covenant, so too your agents have to also be Yidden. The halach of Chumas Akim, that a goy also could go ahead and separate Chumas. So begin the current Daf Mem Aleph, the second parak Ish Mekadesh. Says the Mishnah, Ish Mekadesh. A man could create a Kedushin, could get engaged by either himself or b'shluchai, or with his agent. The Gemara is going to bring the source for that. How do you know that your shliach could go ahead and do Kedushin too? Now, ha'isha miskadesh, a woman could go ahead and be engaged. Oh, b'shlucha, she could go and receive the ring herself, or her agent could receive it for her. Ha'ish, now regarding a man, a father, mekadesh bita could get his daughter engaged kishinada, when she's a maiden, meaning between 12 and 12 and a half, which Rashi points out, obviously meaning when she's a minor. If he receives a kedushin, it's going to be a kedushin. This that we're picking naira is just telling you that the appropriate conduct, that really a girl that's a minor, likatchila, he should not get her engaged. He wasn't explaining when she's 10 years old, don't marry her off, but he could. But we're saying it's appropriate when she's a naira, then the father is becoming Kaddish daughter. And that's bayi b'shluchai, the father can do it himself, or he can send the agent to do it too. Now the Gemara says, I don't understand. Hashto, if we have this halacha, b'shluchai mekadesh, that his agent can do the kedushin, bayi mebayi, do I have to say him? Why have to say the word bayi? I can say, ish mekadesh b'shluchai. Obviously, if he could do it with his agent, he could do it himself. So Rabbi Yisvi says it's coming to tell us, of course he could do it, but we're coming to tell you that there's an idea to Taka do it himself. Mitzvah b'yosim b'shluchai. Is mitzvah doing himself more than his agent, because when he is involved with his body with mitzvahs, he receives more reward. So although you can get a shliach to do it, you can get some guy to go ahead and clean up your kitchen for Shabbos. You do it, you're going to get more reward when you're doing it with your own self. Kihod Rav Safra, which the Gemara brings. When it came to Kabbalah, to preparing for Shabbos, Machrech Reisha, he would singe the head of the animal for Kavod Shabbos. Rav would be Malach Shibuta, would salt the fish. They did it themselves because, of course, they had help. You didn't always had help. Can't do it yourself with these mishpuchas that we have, but to do it yourself is a gresa, a mitzvah, and we wanted to tell you this idea of mitzvah b'yosim b'shluchim. Now, Ikadam, those that say actually regarding Bahar, regarding Kedushin, it's actually isudanami ispa, as Rashi explains. If you could do the Kedushin yourself, I mean, if you can't, obviously Mishnah is saying you could do it with a shliach, but if you could do it yourself and you do it through a shliach, not only is it that you're not getting a mitzvah, you're actually doing something prohibited. Why? What's wrong? Why can't you do a shliach? What's wrong with doing it with a shliach? He says, it's forbidden to go ahead and get engaged to a woman until you see her. Why do you have to see her? But mekikta froen? Yeah. Why do we have a basho? You might see something disgraceful about her, and she's going to be disgraced on you. But the Torah says, and you should love your friend as yourself, and therefore, suddenly 3 weeks later, suddenly found where is I don't even know who this person is, and suddenly hot fan. No, as a mitzvah, you have to see, you have to spend time, you have to make sure you don't see something disgraceful and that you like them. And therefore, that's the point that we're trying to say, that Ish Mekadesh, boy, is coming to tell you that boy, and not only just shliach, to tell you that, yes, it's more ideal to go ahead and do it. Which Shaisa says, it says Ish Mekadesh, yeah, but we want to tell you the word boy to say this idea. When did we say Tidin Rav Yosef? It only says that it's a mitzvah and not an isser. That's a sefer itma. That was said, Rav Yosef said only mitzvah by Yosef Mishloach. He didn't say isser. Why did he say mitzvah? That's going on the sefer, which is on Ha'isha Miskadeshes. When the woman receives the ring, that we said, Ba B'shlucha, her and their agent, Hashta B'shlucha Mekacha. What do you mean? If she could do it a shliach, you think I need to tell you that she could do it herself? And that is what Rav Yosef said. Yeah, mitzvah by Yosef B'shlucha. Mitzvah that she should do it more than their agent. Like Rav Safra said, Macharesha, that he would go ahead and singe the head of the animal, which they would burn off the ear. Rav Malach Shabuti would salt the fish. Abahab, regarding this halacha, that of the woman, even though she didn't see him, meaning he's given by a chasna, and they said to him, look, kick off the maidel, the chanala, and is ranzikt, and is noisachem by him, but she didn't see him. Whatever, she didn't see him. There, isur lesba. There's no prohibition to say, well, she might see something. He might have a huge fleck on his forehead or whatever, some grace, mim that he has. No, then we didn't say it's an isur. What's this double standard? Why is it an isur for the guy that he has to see her, but she doesn't have to see him? Why could it be a one-way mirror that he's looking at her and she's looking at herself? Because Kidushin Daf, the famous teaching of Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish says, Tav l'meisav tandu. Better that you should be sitting with two Milamesav Armalu. So it rhymes. It was a good rhyme. Tandu Milamesav Armalu than by sitting like a widow. Meaning it was a mashal, it was a parable that the women would say on any husband they can get their hands on, that it's good to sit with two bodies than sit alone by yourself, and therefore women are different than men, and therefore it's not an isser if she doesn't see me. Yeah, it's a mitzvah to do it with your own body more than your shliach, but you won't have the isser like you have by a man. So then says Rashi says, wait a second. But then even for herself, there's an isser when he gives the Kidushin to her agent, he's not going to see her. How can you say there is only a mitzvah by Yosem B'Shlucha by herself when she sends a shliach to receive it? The Gemara is making it sound like the way Rashi is asking is that he didn't see her at a previous time. Meaning this is coming with the Kidushin. He says his Rebbe told him to go to the Mimakadosh there for them Mishpucha Micheses. He comes there with the ringel, and she's busy playing her or whatever she's getting. She says to her sister, whatever, go get the ring from Manchusen, right? So why are you saying over there it's only mitzvah, not an isser? Because for her she doesn't have to see him, but then he's not seeing her. Says Rashi, right in the Chanami. But the Mishnah in the Sefer was told about her, and she could do the Kedushin with her or shliach, and therefore when we talked about her, for her it's just a mitzvah. But the isser regarding her we don't have. But you're right, the Reisha was talking about him. We said the terminology of that it's going to be an isser because he has to see her, and therefore he shouldn't be doing with a shliach. Meaning both could do a shliach. For him to send a shliach, it's an isser because he's not going to be seeing her. You're right. When she says a shliach, he's also not seeing her. But that's her shliach. She has no isser. He has an isser. You're right. He would have to still see her. But we didn't say the word of isser there regarding the sefer. Now the Mishnah said, "Ish mekadis is bitoi kishinara." That a man goes ahead and can get his daughter engaged when she is a nair, when she's a pubescent girl, 12 to 12 and a half. Now the gediyuk that it sounds like says the Gemara is kishinara in. It sounds like only when she's a nair kishikitan aloi, but not when she's a minor, which doesn't make sense. We know the father has a right to marry off his daughter for sure when she's a minor, when she's totally in his domain. Says Gemara, why do we say naira? We say yei leila Rav. It supports what Rav said because I'm reading Rav. He says v'itim is something to Rabbi Lazar. Aser la'adam likatchila. Initially, it's forbidden for a person shekadishes biti kishikitanda to get his daughter engaged when she's a minor. When she's 9 years old, don't be marrying her off. Achatigdal v'temen so she gets older and she says, "But playing on the reitza, this man I want." Although the tata zuk and we like this mishpucha, and you're already 2 years old, we're marrying you off. Says the Gemara, don't do that. Give the girl a choice that she likes the guy that she's getting married. Says Taisvis, even though says Taisvis that although the Gemara previously had said that there's no isser for her to send a shliach because tav lemeis. What are you saying? Why do you have to wait till the girl gets older? She's 15, so she has a mind of her own. So tati chabem lib. Well, what do you need that for? I thought the Gemara said that when a man's coming to get her engaged, she doesn't even know who this guy is. She could send her shlucha to go get the ring because tav lemeis of tav lemeis. She's happy to be with anybody better than be single. So why can't you marry her off when she's 9? She's anyways not looking who the guy is. Says Tyson, no, that's when she's an adult. When she's getting engaged to herself. Since she's willing, we don't have to be concerned that maybe she's going to back out. But when she's an 8-year-old girl, where her father is the great belt that the father wears, and he's getting her engaged, we have to be concerned that maybe if she was older, she would not be in agreement. Says Tyson is a famous kasha. Tyson brings says, I currently, not in our times, but in the times of Tysus and maybe previous a few hundred years ago, they used to get their daughters engaged even when they were 8 and 7 and 11 or whatever. And the Gemara says it's forbidden. There's Tysus. That's because every single day the gullus gets stronger on us. and the person has an opportunity right now to give his daughter a nadunya, to give her a dowry, maybe at a later time they're not going to have an opportunity, and his daughter can remain a guna forever, and therefore you have an option, even if she's 6 or 7. Actually, someone just last night on the phone call told me this, that if they would have waited for their oldest sibling, then they would not. By the time they would have gotten married, they had an illness. They would never have had children, and because they got married when they had an opportunity, because they had a mishpacha and they had einiklach, and all because when we're in the gullus now, you have an opportunity to get married, and therefore in our times you don't keep this halacha, and we marry off the girls even if they're 10 or 11 years old, unlike this halacha that the Gemara brings. Now the Gemara asks on the Mishnah, says, wait a second. You said the Ish Mekadesh, Bay B'Shlucha, Ish Mekadesh, Bay B'Shlucha, Shlich is Menalim. Where do we know this concept of agency, that you can send an agent to do what you need to do? The time like learn the Brisa. It says the pasuk in Devarim. It says, when it talks about Gerushin, it says V'Shilcha Mi Beisai, that he sends her away from his house. Now, like Rashi says, it doesn't say V'Gidisha, that he divorces her. Why does it say V'Shilcha? So the word V'Shilach itself comes to teach us, the Machlekes Rashi tells us exactly which words are we talking about over here, but it comes to teach us V'Shilach, that it says in the pasuk V'Shilcha, if you didn't say with the hey, the word V'Shilach itself would teach you, Melamed comes to teach you, Shahu, that the man, that he can make an agent to send the get to his wife. Now, the fact that it has an extra hey, V'Shilcha, and he sends her away, which is really with a mapik hey, but Malamed she shlich comes to teach us that she can make a shlich, like Rashi says, to receive her get, because although it really, we say it, the Balkari says V'Shilcha with a mapik hey, but we read it in the drasha without a hey, because you didn't need to say the hey, and therefore it's like as if it's saying that she sends someone. Now, V'Shilach, V'Shilcha, Rashi says, it says 2 times there. It says in the other pasuk, it says another time, V'Shilcha. What's that coming to teach us? Meaning, extra word V'Shilach and the extra hey together, Melamed Shlich comes to teach us, as if it said Shilach Shilach, as if to tell you that the Shlich himself can make himself a Shliach. Okay. So that teaches us regarding divorce, that you can make a shlich. The Kidushin Minolan, where do we know the halacha from Kidushin? Says if you're going to say we learn that Kidushin from Gerushin, problem is they're not the same. Mali Gerushin, regarding divorce, we find she can yeshna mal karcha. He could do it against her will, so therefore we see that there's certain more rights, more strength you have. So therefore you could do it through shlichus. Who said this? And we would refer to that Kidushin. What else does shlichus apply? That you cannot do mal karcha. The pasuk says over the biyatzav ha'is. It says in one pasuk it says that she goes out and she gets married to someone else. So makar shavai, let's see, the pasuk is already comparing getting engaged to getting divorced. Ma yitziyah mash v'shliach, just like we just brought a source that when you leave you can make a shliach. So when you get engaged you can also make a shliach. Says the Gemara, okay, but what do you do in the Mishnah Masechet this trumas that says someone says to his agent, he has a great field, we have plantations, he can't do truma everything himself. Says to his guy who works for him, the vice president of operations, he says, go ahead and take off truma. So says the Mishnah. So the guy doesn't know, the boss barely speaks a few words, and he expects him to figure everything out. So he doesn't know how much truma he should take off. So what he should do is he should take truma according to the consciousness, the personality of the owner. Meaning, however he recognizes by his boss, if he's a generous guy, if it's a stingy guy, if he's a generous guy, he should give 1 out of every 40. If he's a stingy guy, he should give 1 out of every 60. Because the truma doesn't say explicitly a shiur in the Torah, it just says reishus deganchel, the first of your grain. Really, even if you give it 1 kernel, you fulfill it. Chacham or misakin to give a certain amount. Now, let's say he doesn't know the personality of his boss, he just got the job. First day on the job, the guy says, okay, take up the truma. Okay, but the boss went out, he's in Hawaii now, he took off. I don't know what to do, I don't even know the guy. So then you do the middle type, you do 150, you take, that's somewhere in the middle. Now, Machlekes Rashi tells how to translate these next words, but it's the same idea. The question is which one's pichis, which one's chaisiv. Pichis asara. If he does 10 less, which Rashi says means to say he did less than that, meaning he, instead of 1 out of every 50, takes 1 out of every 40, which is more generous. Or he adds on 10, meaning 1 out of every 60, meaning he's taking less. Either way, okay, you're within normal limits, with like a room of error, margin of error, like it's called. Truma is Truma. Truma is going to be, because you could say, I thought that's what type of personality you were. People think they grow some mumchen in personality types of, oh, this guy. So this guy was a thought. I thought you were this guy. You were wrong, but okay. So, where do we know this from? that the shliach could take truma by truma. Meaning, we know we have a source for gerushin, we have a source for kedushin. How do you know that you can make a shliach for taking off truma? The chitim may begin to say, "Do you have gerushin?" Okay, let's learn that from gerushin. Says Gemara, no, you can't learn that because mala gerushin. What do you find by gerushin? Yeshin chayil. It's gerushin is a mundane thing, but truma is a holy thing. Maybe truma you have to do yourself. So I'm across. Says the Gemara, you're right. We have a source in the pasuk. It doesn't say the word atem, but it could have said atem. Instead, the pasuk about midbar, when it talks about, it says king terim, so you should take truma gam atem. Also, you. What do you mean gam? What's also? That's an extra word. Oh, that's coming to teach you. The word gam also is teaching that not only you, but also a shliach can take up a truma. Okay, says the Gemara, wait a second. If you have a source for truma, just say a source for truma. If I can learn that from gerushin and kedushin from truma, why do you have to say a source by them all? Says the Gemara, no. From the because you could ask and you could say truma is different because you could just think, like Rashi says, you could look at one side and say, okay, I want the truma to be there, and you can eat on the other side, like it says in the pasuk midbar, but that just your thoughts can make truma. So you see, you have more liberties regarding truma that just with a machshav you can make it. So maybe that's where you can make a shliach. Who said you can make a shliach by kedushin and gerushin, which requires an action? Says the Gemara. Okay, now I have another case. What do Mishnah Masechet Pesachim that says chabuda shavet pischa? When you have a group of people that they lost their Korban Pesach nebuch, they gave it to one yokel to go and watch, and then the animal flew off. Okay, they said to one guy from their group, they said, look, do us a favor. Say your bakish. Go try to find the shepsela, our Korban Pesach got lost. Go and find and go slaughter it for us. Now, he went, he found it, and he slaughtered it. Now, the thing is, they didn't trust this guy's going to find it. You have one guy, this guy who's very rigid guy. He says, I don't know, I can't go with relying on this guy. He buys his own sheep, and he goes, and they, for the whole community, he goes and slaughters it. So it says the Mishnah like this. If his was slaughtered first, so he eats from his own, meaning the original one, and they eat and they drink with him. And the reason for that is because they made him a shliach to shecht it for them. So theirs, which is secondary, since his was slaughtered first, there's obviously possible to eat with him. Says the Gemara Manala, where do we know that shliach shalom is kamaisa for the shechting of kachim? Meaning that this guy is a shliach for them all, that he slaughtered it, we see that only he was doing it, he's a shliach. How do we know that a shliach can be for that of kachim, of like a Korban Pesach? Says the Gemara V'chitim, if you're going to say the Yolaf Mehanach, okay, what do you mean? We can learn it out from Truma, we're going from Kidushin, we're going from gerushin. Says the Gemara, no. What do we find by all those things? They're considered mundane regarding kachim, like Rashi points out. Meaning, although we said before, Truma is considered kodesh to Kiddush and gerushin, but Truma is considered mundane regarding kachim. Kachim much higher level. So, who said maybe those things which are like the things you can make a shliach, but maybe kachim you have to do yourself? Says Gemara, you're right. Nafkalim Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. We learn it from a different source. Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. Oh, so we're going to see that idea. That might be relevant. But still, he's a shliach, even if he's part of the group, still a shliach. Oh, right, so that's what the Gemara is going to mention that idea too, but still a shliach. Still a shliach. The other people are not doing themselves. Maybe you have to shech your own compass, maybe you have to do it yourself. Maybe I went together and Rabbi Sakim, them in the long mesa, maybe they'll have to do it. How does that work? How do you know shliach works? By kudshim. So then he says, where do we know that the agent of a person is like himself? He brings a pasuk regarding shchita of a kudshim. Says the pasuk in Shemais, v'shachatu oisa, and this talking about the Korban Pesach. They're going to slaughter kol kahal adas Yisrael, the entire assembling of the gathering of the Jewish people, bein abayim, by the evening of the 14th of Nisan. Now the question is, what do you think the whole community goes and shechts? Well, then only one guy's shechting. What does that mean? How can you have the whole community? It must be some long mesa, to go ahead and slaughter. From here you see the idea that yes, we consider kol kahal because the Asian person is like himself, mamish like the guy himself. Okay, so says the Gemara, wait a second, but why do we need all the other sources? Say the source regarding kudshim, and they learn out Kidushin and Gedushin and Truma from here. So the Gemara, no. Because you could ask and you could say, what do you find by Kidushin? Most of the actions of all the avoidance of the karbanis are al yidei the kahanim, that they are the shliach, they're the agents. So there it makes sense that we see shlichus works. So maybe Korban Pesach too. But there are other things where we don't find necessarily shlichus. Where how do you know shlichus will work? So, no, this is the source of Korban Pesach of kachim. No, this is that source. There is no. This is kachim. This is the source. This pasuk is kol kaladas is all is become Pesach. This is the source. So says the Gemara, okay, I understand you cannot learn out one thing from one thing, meaning you can't learn out from just kachim, just from kachim, just from kedushin, just from gerushin, as we try. But taste echad metarti. Learn out one from two, meaning why do you need kedushin, gerushin, truma, kachim? Pick two of them and learn out one from two. It says the Gemara, haitaisi. Which one are you going to learn out from? So the Gemara tries to go through the options. Okay, say, okay, don't write the source by kachim of kal das is all, but learn that from truma and from kedushin and gerushin. Says Gemara, no, malanach, like we said before, those things they're considered mundane regarding kachim. I can't learn that. Maybe they were more lenient. Maybe we can make a shliach. Okay, what are you going to say? Don't write the halacha by gerushin, but learn it out from the other ones, from kedushin and from truma and from kachim. No, malanach. What do we find by those other things? Because they could be done with thought, meaning kachim are with thought, because like Rashi brings, if a guy makes up in his heart to say that this act should be an oila, it's going to be an oila, as the Mishnah teaches in Shavuos on Daf Chavav Beis. It says, Moitzi B'Secha, I would only know if you say it with your lips. How do you know if you made it up in your heart? So it says in the pasuk, Kol Nadiv Leiv, that any person that donates from the heart is going to be oilas. And we know Truma is going to be with Machshava. So you can't learn out from those either. Like Taisus brings Truma, it says v'nechshav to the maschim, and Kadshim brings a different puzzle. Yeah, he brings the puzzle called Nivlei. Cannot learn from there. Okay, and you can't learn from Kidushin because Kidushin itself is learned from Gerushin. Yeah, that's only like it's more like a moral thing. Like it's inappropriate. Still married to her. It doesn't really do anything. It's just if you made up your mind, you're really going to get divorced. You stam oisvov that you're doing whatever you want with her, even though you plan on just getting rid of her in the next week. Then the Gemara says, "Look to recommend the truma." Okay, wait a second. Maybe don't write truma. Learn that from the rest. Like Rashi says, that's a good option. Why is that a good option? Because you could say, "Oh, what are you going to say?" No, you can't learn from kachim because those are kaidish. So maybe that's something that you could have a shliach for. But truma, which is chayil, isn't all the more so. Meaning it's Rashi. He's explaining why would you learn it from kachim? If kaidish is kaidish, it's more severe. You can make a shliach for truma, and you're going to say no. You're going to say no. You can't learn from kachim because most of the actions of kachim are through a shliach. But gerushin will disprove that because nothing is done through a shliach. And then you can say no. You can't learn from gerushin because it's chal regarding truma, but kachim will disprove that. And chazar then they go back and forth. The common denominator is that it's something you can do by yourself and you can do shliach k'maisa, but you learn that truma. Says the Gemara, hachinami. You're right. The truth is that you could learn out truma from a tzad hashava of kachim and gerushin, because whatever chomer each one has, the other one doesn't have, because truma is kaidish regarding gerushin, but it's not considered kaidish regarding kachim, and this like kachim is through shliach, gerushin is not. So the Gemara goes back to the question: wait, is that the case? V'la'atem gamatem lamali. We had brought a source for shlich shem k'maisa regarding the halach of truma. We just fell off of that. We said you don't need to learn out truma from itself. You could learn out from a tzad hashava of gerushin and of kachim. So what do you need gamatim for? So that's teaching you something else. That's qualifying the halach of shlichus. We need for Rabbi Yanai that says the reason why it says gam to include a shliach is because you need to compare the shliach to the one who's sending him to do the shlichus to say that a non-Jew is going to be puzzled to separate the truma. You're right. I don't need to tell you that you could have a shliach. That I know from a tzad hashava. I need to say what type of shliach is good. Because he says gam atim. It says in the pasuk, oh, so you. What's the gam and atim is comparing the gam to the atim. Ma atim, but it's just like you are Jewish and people of the covenant. So to your agents have to be people of the covenant. Says the Gemara, what do I need a pasuk for? I already know this halacha from somewhere else. Why? Because it says, a slave cannot become an agent to receive the get of for a woman from her husband, because he's not in the category of getting engaged and getting divorced because he's a guy. A guy doesn't have Kidushin. So obviously you don't need a pasuk, because from logic we would say that's something that he does not have application for, because a guy doesn't have truma, so of course he cannot become a shliach. Why do you need a pasuk gam atim to compare gam to the atim? What do you mean? He can't be a shliach because he's not in the parasha of truma. We're talking about truma here. truma, we're saying gam atem is qualifying that for truma to be the shliach. Of course, I know you could have a shliach because I know from tzad hashava of Kidushin and from Gerushin. I need to tell you what type of shliach. What type of shliach? A guy? A guy? Of course, he cannot be a shliach. You can't be a shliach to receive a get for a woman from her husband because you're not b'taris getting Kidushin. So too, you cannot do a shliach for truma. You don't have truma. So the itzrach was necessary because secondly, you would have thought to say that it's different. Eved labar teru klal, a slave has no element ever at all of marriage, and he cannot do divorce because he doesn't have Kidushin. So of course he cannot be makabel the get for a woman. But a non-Jew, it's not true. He does have some element of truma of his own truma. So therefore it is a little different. Not like the Mishnah trumas. When the non-Jew goes and separates their own truma from their own produce, trumas and truma. The truma is a truma to be forbidden for a non-kain. Why is that? So Rashi explains because this Tana holds that there is no kinyan for a non-Jew in Eretz Yisrael to remove the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. And when he smooths out his pile, there's not exempted from Truma, like the Gemara learns in Menachat of Samach and Alf, learns out from the reason that it says the Gancha 2 times, which excludes the Digun of a non-Jew. But as Rashi says, we know Ein Mir Achami El Rabbis. When you say 2 miyutim, it's actually 2 negatives and a positive, which actually includes the when the non-Jew smooths out a pile that it's obligated in Truma. So but I would think to say that he could also be a shliach because since he has truma for himself, he could do truma for the Jew. So you have to say, gam atem, to compare the gam to the atem, to say that what type of shliach. Of course, I know you can make a shliach. What type of shliach has to be b'nei bris and not a non-Jew. But then the Gemara says, Rabbi Shimon the Pata, that he actually says that's not true. He says that a non-Jew cannot take and separate his own truma. It's not like in that Mishnah. It says trumas ebikachav medamas. It says that if the truma of the non-Jew falls into chulin, it's going to make that Jew's chulin forbidden. And if a non-Jew, and if a non-kohen eats it, he's mechayev if he does it by mistake to add a penalty of a fifth, like when you eat truma. Rabbi Shimon Paiter, Shimon says no, you're exempt because he holds that when the non-Jew smooths out his palm, it's called meiruach. It's not going to be mechayev in truma. And he learns out from the Gancha, which says your grain and not the digun, the smoothing out the pile of a non-Jew. As Gemara says Menachas, because according to him, there's no mir achamid, there's no 2 exclusions, because he requires the other pasuk, the Gancha, to teach you something else. So according to him, atem gamatem alamali. What do you need to have gamatem? Of course, a navi kacham cannot be shleich because he doesn't have the halacha of his own truma at all, like the svar we brought before. According to him, what do you need the miyud of atem gamatem? If anyways he's not in the parsha, doesn't have his own truma either. Wait, so Gemara Itzrich, it was necessary to say that you could have a shliach for truma, meaning back to the original pshat, not to exclude the non-Jew. We need to say you could make a shliach for truma. Didn't I say you could already learn that from a tzad hashava common denominator from Kachim and from Gerushin? No, you would think that you cannot have a shliach by truma. Why? So you would have thought to say, since the master says, it says in the pasuk, atem you means v'la'arisin and not a sharecropper. Meaning to say, if you have a worker that gets a certain amount from the dividends, he cannot take off the truma from the portion of the balabais of the owner. And when it says atem yu v'lo not partners, atem yu v'lo petrab is not a caretaker, atem yu v'lo tarmesha in shaloi, and not someone who goes and takes the truma that's not his own without the awareness of the owner. Ema, I would say atem v'lo shluchacham nami. I would say also you and also not your agent. That's why we have to say the word gam to include the shliach, to say that you could have a shliach because we have exclusions of certain other categories that are similar that cannot do it by truma. Therefore, I needed to say that a shliach, however, could. You're right. You would normally know it from a tzad hashava, but since I would think to say that it's excluded, therefore I needed gam to include that you could have a shliach by the halacha of truma. Thank you to any time for hosting us.